Hang on. Here we go. We're recording now. Is everybody, give me a thumbs up if you're okay with recording in the state of Maryland. It's a law that I asked. I'm going to remember since Carolyn remembered that. All right. We all remember Linda Tripp, right? That's our reference on how we remember we must ask for permission. Okay. Thank you, Carolyn. Meeting Jesus in Matthew. Jesus grows up in Nazareth, we presume, and then he starts to travel around. And so we've got 3 stories tonight. We're really going to look at 2 of them. We're going to break into groups, and we're going to break into groups, and you're going to be assigned one of these stories. You don't get to pick. And then we'll talk about that story, come back together and share them so that we hear both of them tonight, okay? And let me tell you what else is going on before I break up into breakout. We're going to break out into breakout rooms. Our purpose tonight is to really read the text and get clear. Are there any tricky words or phrases or geographical locations? And then we're going to try to see if we can summarize it, if we can know the story ourselves. We're going to look at the geography, where Jesus is and how he moves around in the space with people. The most important thing at the end of every session is that we're starting to get a sense of what Jesus is like in this story. What's Jesus like? If I asked you to tell me what a character in The Lord of the Rings, let's say Gandalf is the first one that comes to mind. If you've seen that movie, you could tell me something about that character. If I ask you about Han Solo in Star Wars, you could tell me about Han Solo or Princess Leia. Oh, they look like this, they do this, they're the person who always does that. We really want to know about Jesus. When we come back, we will look a little bit at the geography. That is another character in the text. Some of us were going to be in the Holy Land in the month of April. And so I had already started getting really fixated on the geography of the Holy Land. But already, let's see, by tonight, we will be about here. All of these things happened. In the genealogy, there's mention of the exile to Babylon. There's the birth in Bethlehem. Then there was the Magi and King Herod in Jerusalem, escape to Egypt. There's all these geographical references. Tonight, we really start here with John in the desert of Judea, and we'll go all the way to the fishermen at the Sea of Galilee. So we're going to travel through these stories together. Okay? And these are the texts that we're going to look at. Matthew 3, 1 through 17, and Matthew 4, 12 through 25. So you'll find out which one as soon as I pop us into our breakout rooms. So give me a moment to do that. And any questions so far? All right, I'm creating the breakout rooms, and I am going to also trying to get Mike into a different room than me, so give me just a moment. And all right, everybody ready to go for a ride? We aren't going many places these days. This is it, friends. This is exciting. All right, so we'll be in our breakout rooms for 15 minutes. Mike, you feel ready? All right, and if you end up with Mike, you will be doing Matthew 3, the baptism. If you end up with me as your facilitator, we'll do Matthew 4, the adult ministry portion. Here we go. You're going to get an invitation, and if anything goes wrong, I will help you out. Don't worry about it. Hi, Diane.
Hi.
Can you see how to do it?
Breakout room. The phone just rang, so I just...
Okay, gotcha. That can be confusing.
We're the first ones back. We must be the smartest.
Yeah, they'll come too eventually. Maybe they're just having a great, there comes Mark. Okay, we see them. They're coming back. Welcome back. You you come back muted, I think, usually. So you'll have to unmute if you want to say something. We had one of us looked at a story from Matthew 3, and the rest of us looked at the story from Matthew 4. We did not do the story in the middle, the wilderness story with the temptation and the devil. You can go back and read that on your own if you like. And so would somebody from group 2, breakout group 2, who was doing Matthew 3, does anybody feel brave and want to summarize their story for us? We're all friends. It's all good.
Well, I'll go. I thought I got nominated there at some point. Our discussion was around at what point did Jesus realize who he was as the Son of God?
Mm-hmm.
And we had a fairly wide range of possibilities there, everything from, it was a gradual, and the consensus, I think, at the end was kind of it was a gradual process over time, and of being fully participating in the life of the synagogue and the Jewish families of the time. John and Jesus knew of each other, the family relationship, even though they didn't live anywhere near each other. John was down around the Dead Sea, and Jesus was up around the Sea of Galilee. But clearly, when they come together in this story, John immediately recognizes that Jesus has a superior place to his, which gets affirmed in the last verse of chapter 3 with God announcing that this is my son. Kind of summary, kind of makes it clear where he was at that point in time.
Nice. Thank you for that summary, Paul. Does anybody from the group I was in want to give a brief summary of the story? Just how'd the story go? What was the flow? If they missed the episode, what would you tell them?
I'll do it if no one else will.
I think that means you, as soon as you say that, I think everyone's like, okay.
Thank you.
The angel of death has passed over your doorpost.
Yes, you're safe.
Okay, so Jesus heard that John had been killed, and he decided he needed to go somewhere different from Nazareth, so he went further north up into the region of Galilee. And then he went there to fulfill a prophecy from the prophet Isaiah that from the regions of Zebulun and Naphtali would come a great light, and that those who'd been in darkness would see a great light, and those in the region of death would experience life. So Jesus begins to proclaim, to repent, that the kingdom of heaven has come near. And then he appears along the shore of the Sea of Galilee, and he calls two brothers, Simon and Peter, to leave their fishing nets and follow him, which they drop and follow him immediately. And then he comes upon another two brothers, John and James, the sons of Zebedee, and he says the same thing, come with me. They drop their nets, say, bye, Dad. They begin then to travel and to preach in all the synagogues around Galilee, and they're doing fabulous things. They're healing people, they're healing epileptics and casting out demons and healing paralytics, and their fame spreads all the way up to Syria. Jesus's fame spreads all the way up to Syria, and great crowds begin to follow him from all over, from Jerusalem and Decapolis and the regions beyond the Jordan. So lots of people from lots of places are tuning in to see what's on this YouTube channel with Jesus.
That's right. That was a great summary. The one thing I would adjust slightly is he goes to Galilee not because John is killed, but arrested.
Arrested.
Yeah, and I think, right?
Yes.
Okay. because I think we find the rest of that what happens to John later in Matthew's gospel. So I don't want to be confusing.
I have a question. Is Simon and Andrew the same person?
Simon and Peter are the same person.
Oh, okay.
Okay, it's Simon in the text, but we've called him Peter already, haven't we?
And
I think it's Peter in the text.
Is it Peter in the text?
Yeah, that's what, and Robert said Simon.
But the actual text says Simon, who is called Peter, I think.
Oh, okay.
So Simon Peter is the same person, right?
Yep. So Simon is probably his birth name, and then Jesus names him Peter, like a nickname, meaning rock. So it's like, you've got this new friend, come follow me, Simon, and then you get to know each other, and you're like, you're not Simon anymore, you're Rocky, because you're Rocky for whatever, right? So he nicknames Simon the Rock, which we have somebody in like pop culture, the Rock, right? And so it's just like, because I will build my church on you, right? St. Peter will be the rock. So there's all this lore and connection about the rock. But Simon and Peter are the same person. Simon Peter, Simon, who is also called Peter. Go ahead, Mark.
So was John the Baptist Jewish? Question number one. He was?
Yeah, I would say he is Jewish.
Okay. So what I'm curious about this, why hasn't baptism, the ritual of baptism, carried forward in the Jewish faith? And baptism has become more of a Christian faith.
Totally.
And yet all these folks were Jewish in the moment, and the modern Jewish religion kind of stops, they do something that's called,
Mikvah?
Tivla?
Mikvah?
Or Tvillah.
Tefillah. So I don't know what that is. Is that a bath of?
It says what the Google machine says. It's it's called has some similarity to baptism, and the two have been linked. So it's a purification rites in the Jewish religion.
Right.
And so my point is, we're talking about a lot of Jewish folks, but now we're moving into this Christianity experience, and baptism, it's dropped in the modern Jewish religion.
So everything we do as Christians, almost, I mean, you got to put a caveat. I can't say everything, but almost everything we do is as Christians has Jewish roots, unless it has pagan roots, like a Christmas tree, right? So, but that's a whole nother story for another day. The Jewish roots of baptism are here in the story. John is inviting people to come and wash themselves and turn away from the kind of wickedness that has brought about the Roman Empire, oppressive, whatever. And so just like you would, if you were handling a dead body as a Jewish person, which you have to do if somebody dies, you have a ritual to wash and cleanse yourself and become pure so that you don't bring any disease into your home. And so in the same way that water is used to wash and create purity that's really about biology and bacteria, it's also symbolic of washing ourselves from sin and letting our souls be pure. Wash me and I will be whiter than snow, that old hymn. And so the idea of wash away the bacteria, the sin, the defilement, and let me be pure and start all over. And so John was preaching a kind of purification, washing, so that you could have a moment where you say, my life will never be the same again. I'm going to turn in a new direction after this. Do you know what I think people do now? I think they get tattoos. I think that instead of like going to see John at the Jordan River, I think some young people say, I now know something really true about myself, and I don't want to ever repeat that mistake or do that again or whatever. So I'm going to go mark it on my body. Right? I mean, I think at some level tattoos function right now because there's some need to mark a moment, a transition moment, and we don't have other rituals. So this ritual bath, there still are ritual purification baths. And I think that baptism is something that some Jewish groups either still today do for a convert to Judaism. So if one of us was going to become Jewish, there might be a ritual bath involved. I'm not sure about that. That's more like something I've heard, but I haven't seen it written in a scholarly source.
What's the movie? Orthodox? Did anybody see that on Netflix? The young woman is married and she's bathed first. Her mother, I think it was her mother, is with her, and she has to go in and be bathed before she puts her wedding gown on, which was interesting.
And so now it's a symbol because she probably has a shower at home. But in the ancient world,
they were Hasidic, so it was a real bath.
But is Jesus, as he's baptized now, and is he proclaiming Christianity, or is he still thinking I'm Jewish?
We don't know. That's a great question to wonder about.
Yeah.
At this point,
wow.
You know, that's kind of, is he the Christ? Is he the anointed one? Was he anointed in his baptism, or is that something that happens later? When does he understand himself as God? Does he always know? When do other people understand that he's God or something like God, and they're trying to figure that out? It's really not clear, and that's a good question to carry through Matthew. Who does Jesus think he is? Who do other people think Jesus is? And does he mean to start something new, or does he mean to call people into the truer heart of Judaism?
And maybe another question here, just to ponder, does the faith of Christianity become Christianity at the time of his resurrection?
Good question. Good question. Like when would you say it breaks from Judaism?
Or when is Christianity born?
Yeah.
As a faith.
We could all make a different case, I bet. Some would say the moment he's born, or the moment Joseph hears about the birth in Matthew, or Mary, or the angels. And some would say it doesn't happen till the resurrection. Some would say it happens when he calls his disciples. They start to follow him. There's a movement. That's the movement. The movement begins when he calls the disciples. So, I think there's lots of ways to say it begins.
In the 3rd chapter, they reference righteousness. So I checked it in Wikipedia, and it says, righteousness is the quality or state of being morally correct and justifiable. The justifiable intrigued me, and that may link into all of this too.
So you know how you might say, is it right that somebody did this? You're basically asking, are they righteous? Were their actions aligned with what we consider to be a sound way to live and be?
Exactly.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
All right, so I'm going to take us back to the screen share. My dream is that each one of you will be able to tell one of these stories to other people and to yourself throughout the week, and mull it over and know it and chew on it, and that it will become a story that you're in as well. So that's for next week. Let's go this way. Sorry for all right. So we've got the map here as well. Susan asked a question about Capernaum. It's right here. That might be kind of hard to see, but it's right where my arrow is. Capernaum, and Nazareth is here, and the Jordan River. John is baptizing along the Jordan River. This is the area of the Decapolis, and Damascus is way up here in Syria. So we had that mention of Syria,
Right.
Breakout room. And there are scholars who believe that Syria was mentioned in the Gospel of Matthew because it was written for people in Antioch in Syria. So that's one theory about that. But I did find it very strange that Syria was in the Gospel, and I don't ever remember reading that before. And then, which, as we hear about Syrian refugees and everything happening in that country, it's a very interesting thing that that's part of the biblical story.
Isn't the Syrian church one of the very first churches?
Syria.
Syriac church?
Absolutely. It's absolutely a very ancient church. All right. So that is all for tonight. We are at 6:01.
Can I ask, the first one was Matthew, it's 4:1-11, thank you.
Yep. So basically, these are all the verses in chapter 3 and 4. without the 10 of his wilderness retreat, we'll call the temptation.
Got it.
And
Thanks.
if you wanted to go deeper and study that on your own, you can use the internet to find other references to the devil in the Bible, and also start to develop a sense of what's the personality of the devil like. You know, we have this idea of a red monster with horns, but what is the personality of the devil like? All right, so for next week, just to give you a little preview, and some of us heard the sermon, part of the Sermon on the Mount today in morning devotions, we're going to start to understand Jesus as an authority figure. People followed him. He was somebody baptized him, and there was a little authority struggle there. He goes out into the wilderness with the devil, and then he starts to call followers. They follow him. So we know that he's got this charisma or commanding presence. In the next several chapters, we're going to explore his authority and what he has authority over. And then just to kind of walk it down, then we're going to see how his authority bumps up against other types of authority in the world at the time. So this is how Matthew's story really unfolds. We set it all up and get to where we are now, and then we start to build a sense of his authority, and then we see his authority come crashing against other sources of authority in the ancient world. Okay? So that's giving you a sense of the flow. So next week we'll explore the Sermon on the Mount, which is when he starts to really express that authority. All right, you want to learn more? You still good?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, good.
5.
All right, I'm going to close us in prayer, and then we're going to say hello to Javier, the Chihuahua. All right, let us pray. Gracious God, there is so much we do not know about you, and even when we study the Gospels, we still have so many questions. We want to know you better. So please bless us. Bless this time where we have come together to study you in your word. Bless us in the days ahead with more things to wonder about, question, and ponder as we seek to know you. We seek to know you not just to have an intellectual experience of you, Lord, but to have a spiritual, intimate relationship with you, where we know you and we know that you know us. So draw us closer to you each day. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you. Thank you, Michael. Thanks, Tina.
You're welcome.